Welcome to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm your host, Mitch Austin. And during this show, what we talk about are the defining moments of people's lives, sharing their story, their light, their messages of love, hope, and inspiration. So I'm so excited about today's show. Few things before we roll into it. I'm going to be in Phoenix on September 9th doing Taming Your Inner Critic, and we have a link right here if you want to join us. It's going to be a Saturday night, 7 to 8:30. We're going to have an amazing time, and there's 7 types of inner critic. I know one's bad enough, but we're going to work with some tools and help you tame your inner critic. Also, I have a Rise and Speak starting on September 14th, and you'll see a little promo for that later. So let's get to it. I am here with Darren Gipson. Thank you so much for joining the show. And a little bit about Darren. He's originally from Kentucky, and he served in the United States Navy 2004 through 2006. He's also served as a civil federal service for 12 years. He has his BA in business management. He's currently attending Pepperdine University to get his master's in legal studies. He's married to, let me see if I can get the name right, Federico Gallardo. Did I say that correct?
Federico Gallardo.
Okay, there we go. From Buenos Aires. Ooh, I bet you there's a good story there about how you met. Darren is a father of one and also a intuitive tarot card reader. That's how I met Darren, was at a show, and I had this amazing reading from him, and we had this like good vibe and energy, and I'm like, wow, you need to be on my show. And he said yes. So thank you so much. Darren also has a YouTube channel you'll want to check out, which I'll have him talk more about. He's also the owner of a small business, King Pen, P-E-N. I like that play on words, by the way, LLC. And he also finds time in his free time to help veterans. So welcome to the show, Darren. So glad you're here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Good energy today, and glad to be here to share my story.
Awesome. So where are you at in the world right now, and what are you up to?
Right now, I am with the husband and the fur babies, and we are currently parked in Sacramento. We left Portland, Oregon, which we have been on a little journey ourselves. So we left about 2 weeks ago, traveled down the 101 Pacific Highway coast, and landed here where we met at some of the Northern California shows. So
right.
Yeah, so Northern California for the moment.
Nice. So doing van life, kind of short term.
Yes, short term. So while we're traveling and doing shows, it's good to get out there and experience, different places and energy. And as you said, my bio, my husband's from Argentina, so it also gives him a chance to see our great country here. So,
well, how fun. So thank you again for making time. And so, you've had an amazing story. I mean, you and I met the other day, and just, you're only 37, but I feel like you've lived so much life, being in the Navy and the federal service and all that you're doing now, going back to law school. So, if the story of your life, Darren, was a book title, what would it be and why?
So the title that I would choose if my life had a book would be Stepping Out of the Shadows.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, no, I say that because I grew up in a very conservative household, where I was the only child in that household. However, I always felt like I needed approval or I lived under someone else's thumb for a lot of my life. So that is why I would call it that, because until I started doing trauma work and therapy, I didn't understand those behaviors. So for me, it was coming out of a even a period of darkness, into a period of enlightenment, and then just also just living life in a sense of freedom. So that's why I would definitely call it that.
No, I love that. And it does seem like coming out is kind of a theme for you on many levels, right?
Yes, it is.
Because you grew up in Kentucky, but as a gay man, or at some point Can you tell us a little more about that and how that changed?
Sure. Yeah, and I would like to preface before I even tell my story that I'm not, as far as religion and spirituality, whatever you do for you, that's you're happy, I'm happy. So, however, with my own personal story, I grew up again in a conservative state, and conservative Christian household, and came out
Mhm.
around the age of 15,
Wow.
um, which was ended up being kind of a disaster altogether.
Uh-huh.
Um, yeah, so it was a really traumatic childhood and coming out for me as a teenager in Kentucky, for sure.
Yeah, because they got the church involved and everything, right? Trying to, like,
Sure.
fix you or
Absolutely. So looking back, I was about 16, 15, or it was actually before I got driving, so 15. Um, Unfortunately, I was having problems in life. Of course, I just came out. I was a child sex abuse survivor,
Mm,
um, and I was living with that untold story. So I was holding a
mhm,
lot of trauma, and for me,
mhm,
my life was just it was a lot of just craziness, honestly, at that age,
mm,
and then plus hormones. My parents, in fairness, they didn't, I feel, know the appropriate way to deal with
right,
me or even what I was going through.
right,
Um,
right.
and it wasn't until recently that, again, I understood that from a different point of view. When my younger years, I thought, no, my parents just hate me, and that's just not the case. I felt, a lot
Right,
of it was just lack of education around the subject.
right, right. No, I think it's great that you can kinda do that look back and see they just didn't know what they didn't know. Of course, when you're going through it, right,
Oh,
it's
it's
a whole
awful.
different yeah, it's a whole different experience, but I
Sure.
love that you can do that look back, and I think that's really powerful when we're in, the stories that we have of our life as we continue to move forward and evolve, when we can look back and get a different reframing that many times I think is more accurate because you can see more, looking back. That's why they say it's 2020, right? Looking back.
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely. No, couldn't be more correct on that.
yeah. So there you were in Kentucky and then you wanted to get out of Dodge.
Right. So, as the story goes with most high school teenagers that just graduate, or, you don't have a lot of money at 18.
Yeah.
So, the fastest way for me out of Kentucky was to join the military. So,
Oh,
I chose the Navy, which
yeah.
was it was a mixed bag of emotions and feelings, but overall, I'm
Mhm.
very thankful for the experience and the people
Mhm.
I had
Mhm.
met and interacted with along the way.
And you said you served during the Don't Ask, Don't Tell, so that must have been uh
I did,
tough
and
for
I
you.
know that now that we're on a public forum, a lot of people have always been curious about my personal story. So this is you get the honor of hearing it first. You heard it first here with Mitch. But um, no, I was, as I said, I had a very traumatic teenage,
Mm,
childhood years. And so when I went off into the military, it was don't ask, don't tell. So not only did I feel the pressure and culturally from like my
mhm,
family and that's that area in the church,
mhm.
um, but I also felt the need to fit in with the military. You don't want to stand
Mm.
out in the military
No.
at all because that's just not what you do. So what did I do? I reverted back to my old way of thinking in the shadows per
Mhm.
se, like my book, and I married a woman.
Right,
And
right.
yeah, and
Mhm.
we ended up having a child together, which
Wow.
while that was not the master plan at the time, again, I'm
Mhm,
still thankful for all of that, and
mhm,
which I know we'll discuss that later on also.
mhm. Right, so you got married, but you're pulling yourself back in,
Sure.
but at some point, right, the authenticity of who you were and who you know yourself to be, right, at some point that did
Sure.
the relationship dissolve.
Of course. Just because, I mean, the fact was I was gay. That's the facts. So, um, I can only control my actions looking back at the time.
Right.
So it was shame on me. I shouldn't have made that decision. But again, it was based out of shame and guilt and fear.
Right.
Um, and I don't regret that decision. I
Yeah.
wish things were differently, but I learned a lot from that. But
Right. Right.
yeah, no, it was don't ask, don't tell, and it was more of let's go back into suppression mode. So, but to your point, you can only do that so long and build things on a faulty foundation until they start crumbling.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's so true, right? When we are unauthentic in one area, it's easy to be unauthentic in others, right? And it just
Absolutely.
kind of permeates. And then we use other means to try and deal with the cognitive dissidence, right? I mean, I know for me, there were addictive behaviors I started doing.
Same.
Yeah, to
Absolutely
try
the same. It's for a gay man that had come out who was facing a world of rejection, who
and
then went back into the closet for Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and married a woman and had a child, only to go back through another coming out through that divorce. It was super traumatic, but looking back, absolutely it was my own fault. But I have learned to forgive myself, because at that time I can't know what I didn't know. I just didn't know. And so
right.
until I got older and took the time to do the work, it's just that's how it was at the time. But I definitely learned some lessons from that, for sure.
So what was that defining moment, Darren, where you said, I just can't live this way anymore? Like what brought you out of the shadows?
Sure. So when I got out of the military, we moved back to Kentucky. And of course, like I said, that wasn't who I was as a straight man. So I turned to drugs and alcohol heavily. And so for me, I became such a zombie and such a person that I didn't know, and so removed from myself and just life in general. And that was that moment that I realized, when I lost everything, literally everything, that was, I feel like, the moment that was the catalyst for change. That was the starting moment.
Wow.
Sure.
Well, and then you fled Kentucky and went to
Nashville after that.
Oh, Nashville. I thought it was Oregon.
I did 5 years in Nashville, and then I actually waited until my daughter became a teenager, when I felt that she was old enough to, she was traveling and visiting me on a plane, and we had that, we had our visitation and stuff, and it was working. And I said, you know what? So then I spent 5 years in Nashville, and then went off to Oregon finally by myself.
Fabulous. Well, Oregon must have been a much better suitable environment for how you knew yourself to be. And
it absolutely was. But interestingly enough, I feel that because I was in such a conservative or different area than that aligned with me, that it was almost like I actually had to learn to let that programming go that happened over time, and almost relearn my actual self. And let me tell you, even at 37, I'm no old man, but it gets harder and harder as the years go on. So
get through. I know that truth all too well. Well, and so when you got to Oregon, is that when you started the federal job?
No, I had been in a federal position for a while, but once I got to Oregon, that's when my career started actually accelerating in the federal government. And like I said, it was good until it wasn't. It's
right.
So I definitely experienced more than my share of challenges there at the end, which is why I'm no longer with the federal government at this time.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you can talk about the harassment at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I can. Yeah, as long as no names and all of that are dealt with, because we are in active litigation still. Yeah.
Right, because some people don't understand that sexual harassment isn't just a women's issue, right?
Absolutely. And so, with that said, if you don't mind, that's where this last year in 2022, I took on a new higher level administrative role over a facility in our country. And unfortunately, after 12 years with an agency, and always having just the utmost respect with everyone, I was a very model employee. But I never thought that I would be a victim of sexual harassment from a senior executive leader. And, but that is the case. And that is my truth.
Right.
And it happened.
Right.
And the evidence was presented.
Right.
And it's still being finalized at this time.
Right.
So, yeah. So let me tell you that when all of that happened to me, it threw me into a definite place of humility for others around me that had come before me, especially women. I think these are the facts. As a white man in America, that's just not something, even as a gay man, that's not something that I would normally experience. It's not normal. I mean, for anyone, but especially it's a very, anyway, but it happened. And so I did exactly everything by the book, the way they teach you. To tell your supervisor, to tell this agency, to document. And so I did. And even though I did everything by the book, I still was they tried to hush me, essentially. And so it was just a disgusting feeling of more shame and guilt, because you're being invalidated, essentially. And who wants to be invalidated when you're the victim? Like, it's just like, let's double down on our bullying. Like,
it's another injury, injury, right? To
exactly.
Going on. Oh man, and I guess my question too is, Darren, do you think you were treated differently around this subject because you're male and not female?
No. I think it is such a huge systemic problem, not only in the government, but of course everywhere. And that's the unfortunate part. So I would like to say to everyone who is listening today, male, female, non-binary, doesn't matter. You are important. You matter. And if this has happened to you, you don't deserve it. Keep your head up and keep fighting.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. We need to say more of that.
Yes.
Right?
Amen.
Because there's always this kind of tendency to throw it back on the person that's been victimized. I mean, that's just terrible. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story.
Of course. You're welcome.
So here you are. You've been in the Navy. You've been a federal civil servant, and then you start reading Tarot.
Yes.
Starting a YouTube channel. How'd that leap happen?
It's quite the change. So, so again, in my book of stories, my life stories, let's rewind back to 2019. So, as I mentioned previously earlier in the show, people that are just now tuning in, I was a childhood sexual abuse survivor. And so I did hold that within for many, many years. Really, the only people that knew about that were my absolute closest friends, like my girlfriends, and then my partners, my intimate partners, because, of course, there are behaviors that come along with being a victim of such things. So I felt that was very good to be transparent with my partners about that. So that's how, when I told my parents that I was abused sexually as a child by one of our close family members, I wasn't heard, and I wasn't believed. And in fact, I was, even similarly to my recent experience with my last job, I was hushed. I was tried to be hushed.
Wow.
And unfortunately, no one was there except me and him. And I know the story and he knows the story. And I was willing to go polygraph and the whole, just to feel validated. That's how desperate it seemed. And looking back, it was a lot of desperation at the time, just to be seen and heard. But that's what drew me into tarot and spirituality. I had such negative experiences with my own family growing up, coming out, with my own traumatic experiences, that I said, I always knew I had some kind of supernatural, esoteric gift, but I really just kind of started following signs and synchronicities that led me to tarot, started doing trauma work and, with other readers and people. And it just, one thing led to another. And one of my crazy Aries friends, I love you, Aries, but she was like, put yourself on YouTube. Not something I would ever do in a million years. And I was like, you know what? Why not? It's COVID. I have nothing else better to do. So I did, right? And then it just started, not only did it take off, but for me, it was about helping the other people. I started
Mm,
getting feedback, and it was
yeah,
energy exchange
yeah.
and stories of trauma. Then it was just one thing led to another, and it just kind of took off into my next journey in life.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah,
Well, we're going to jump to a commercial break here in a second, but when we
perfect.
get back, we're going to talk about some of those signs and synchronicities. We're going to
Yes.
dig into that. So don't go away. And the next spiel we have here for the commercial is going to talk about my Rise and Speak program, 7-week program where you look at your life and you take it and put it into a message, kind of like a TED Talk. And I work with you over 7 weeks to do that and then deliver it live. So here comes the commercial. And if you want to sign up, reach out to me and we'll get you registered. It's going to start September 14th. Here we go.
As an audience member, I was struck by how well prepared these new speakers were.
Dig into the pivotal moments in your story, in your life, and then express them, process them in a way to where you can share them with others and really share in a meaningful way for you and for those who are hearing your story and things that really matter to you and matter to the world.
I saw in myself and in my cohort, oh my God, such wonderful, wonderful breakthroughs, such wonderful healing. And that is the blessing of Mitch Austin's class. So go ahead and sign up.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I want to thank Shay Bird for joining us live today and Wayne Baldwin. So glad you're with us live on the show. And I'm here with Darren Gipson, who is going to share with us a little bit about his signs and synchronicities to go from a federal service job to start doing intuitive tarot. What was showing up for you?
Wow. So initially, like I said, it was it started with like friends and families and like little messages and people just, I mean, encouragement. And everybody might say, oh, well, that's just normal. And I'm like, yeah, it is, until
Mhm.
um I started putting the messages out there. I started feeling good. It felt intuitive, like this is where I should be. And then, for instance, again, I'm not about the views, but for my story purposes, one of my first 3 videos I ever launched on my channel, I'll never forget it. One of my
Mhm.
Cancer zodiac sign videos hit over 10,000 views. First time. Yeah. And so
Wow.
for me, that was, again, I'm not a public speaker. I don't like to really put myself out there like that, but that was just more confirmation to me that this is my line of work. And then people started writing in, and it was only at first specific things that I went through. For
Mm.
instance, I had a mother who had a
Mhm.
young child who had been sexually abused, and they were going and trying to navigate the family court system and those
Mhm.
kind of issues. So for me, I have already lived that. So it was like spirit sent me I feel certain people, certain
Mhm.
circumstances that
Mm.
were almost identical to mine, that I was able to just walk these people through. And so for me, it was just like, this is where I need to be, for the greater good of the collective, to help my
Yes.
fellow human. I'm not perfect, no one is, but
Yeah.
it just was something that it was just my calling.
Yeah. No, I love how you saw everything lining up, like how you were attracting people who needed what you had already walked through, right?
Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
that's really where the medicine is, where the light is. Each one of us have walked through something. And when we can show up for somebody who's in the midst of that journey, that's where the real powerful support and healing is. So I'm so grateful that you said yes to that, because you just said something very interesting. You said, I'm not a public speaker, but you somewhere you found the courage to do that.
It was because I took that inner child of me who
Mm,
didn't have a voice and that
mm,
had been silenced by so many people for so
mm,
many years.
mm.
And I think honestly, over the time of 37 years, that
Wow.
it was like a pressure cooker. And finally, when
Mm.
that pressure cooker exploded, it came out in productive ways. Tarot, healing, let's make
Right.
lemons into lemonade. Like that's what I did. That was my
Yeah.
goal. And that's what I continue to do.
Yeah. Well, speaking of lemons into lemonade, what I understand is you had a failed relationship that was kind of the final trigger, right? For you to start to move into tarot?
It was actually, interestingly enough, the same individual that gave me one of my first tarot decks was
Mhm.
also the relationship that caused me that pivotal moment. So,
Interesting. Wow.
I'm gonna keep it high vibe, but hi if you're watching. No, I'm just kidding. I do wish him well.
Yeah,
However, it was
yeah,
a very, I learned a lot from the experience,
right.
and that relationship. We were both, neither of us were in a place to be in a relationship. We were both unhealed individuals
Right,
and we were trauma bonding, long
right,
story short. And I
right,
think once that light bulb moment came for me, I didn't, it wasn't that I disliked the individual, but at the
right.
other, I can only control myself. And so I had to step
Yeah,
away. And so,
yeah.
yeah, I started doing tarot and it started aligning with what was
Mm,
going on in my life. So I kind of use that as teaching tools and then,
right.
one foot in front of the other until here we are now. I'm coaching and it's just
Yeah.
a beautiful experience all around.
Yeah, well, when I had my reading with you, it was
Yes.
relationship based. And it was about something that was ending for me, and what was so wonderful about our session together is you really confirmed what I knew. Sometimes we need confirmation for what we know inside, but we really don't want to have to know that we know it, right? And
Sure.
in our session together, you were confirming that, like, this isn't a match, this is not healthy. You really do need to move on, right? Because sometimes we can end a relationship, but we're still looking back and we only remember the good stuff. Right? We're
Right.
having this bias of recall. And that was hugely healing for me. So I'm just so grateful, um,
Thank you for sharing that.
for you sharing your gift. And you are now known as the, home of the 11:11 reading. What is
Yes. 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 No, a lot of people, you go to the fairs or online and there's a lot
Yeah,
of high price readings, but I did coin the term 1111. That's, angel numbers. So
right,
1111 talks about new beginnings, but I do offer, even on
right,
my website in person, no matter where you find me, if you found me on the
yeah.
street, on the corner, if you need a one question or simple tarot card pull, it's $11.11. So that's where it's
Yeah,
home of the 1111 reading. So
yeah.
if you just need a little advice, but nothing really super in depth, yeah, it's perfect for you.
Love it. I love it. I love it. And I didn't even pick the 11:11. I think I picked something higher in your
No, you did. Thank
show.
No, but it's good. It's good. I'm
Yeah.
also a realist, people, so I know that inflation is real. Okay, it hits us all. So let me be clear about that too. So
Mm, fabulous, fabulous. So, on this journey, where it feels like you've lived many lives, in so far as you've gotten so far and more to come. But what are you most proud of so far in your journey?
the most proud moment I would have in my journey would be leaving the federal government.
Ooh, tell me more.
Yeah, I feel like that. I feel like I've been through a gauntlet of events, just a gauntlet. And
Mm,
for me, that was to being that victim of sexual harassment was
mhm,
so similar
mhm.
to the harassment and narcissistic abuse that I received growing up.
Yeah.
That it was the biggest release I've ever had in my life. I was terrified. I was scared
Mhm.
to death. And for everybody that's listening to this, please don't just say, "Oh, well, Darren, had a little stress." No, I don't run out and quit your job. That's not what I'm saying. but we also have to be realistic.
Right.
My happiness was coming into play. I couldn't sleep, and it was
Ooh.
just one negative event after the other. And I said, ultimately I had to have a hard talk with myself. And I said,
Mm.
I'm in this secure job because my parents were in a government job, and that what was drilled into my head. So for me
Mhm.
to undo that programming and say,
Right.
unfortunately, it's about my happiness and my survival, and not
Mhm.
about how much money I make, or security comes at a cost. People say you work for the government.
Right.
Well, yeah. And I'm not saying every agency is like this, but with my own personal story, it was the
Yeah.
security came at the cost of selling your soul to the devil. And that's just not what I'm signing up for.
Right.
I'm in the business to help people, not to break them down. And so it just didn't align with me. And I said, after meeting with so many people after tarot and
Yeah.
fairs and YouTube and coaching, I had to practice what I preached. I couldn't sit here to all of my
Mhm.
clients, neglected,
Mhm.
and say, this is what you should do, when I wasn't even living that. And
Mm.
so was it terrifying? Absolutely, 1,000,000% yes. Did
Mhm.
I push through and make it and come out better in the end? Also yes. So would I do it all over again? 1,000,000%.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Well, I suspect that there will be people who watch this video and hear your story who might be in a soul-sucking job, right? Where they feel like the life force is leaving them. I know I'd had my own experience of that back in my 40s, and I was so disingenuous with, where I was, but, secure job, good title, right?
Sure.
I was well thought of in the community, high profile, so many things to reinforce us staying in that kind of situation, like with you, secure job, federal government, programming from your parents, probably got a lot of validation because you had that job from them. So what do you tell somebody who's feeling like they're selling their soul and is afraid to make that change? What would you tell them?
Absolutely. I would This may sound so simple, guys, but really just take a piece of sheet of paper, just a sheet of paper,
Mhm.
sit down at your table, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be job. It could be any negative situation,
Right.
whether it
Relation.
be a toxic relationship or
Mhm.
friendship,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, get a piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, and do a
Mhm.
simple pros and cons list. It's as
Mhm.
simple as that. If
Mhm.
over a period of time there are so many cons
Mhm.
and you're working to change things, but nothing is changing,
Mhm.
that's the definition of insanity, beating your head on a wall and not getting different results, right? So why would you
True.
stay in that situation?
Right.
I
Right.
mean, you really have to take a pause, unpack the thought, and say,
Mhm.
why am I tolerating this behavior or this
Right.
treatment? Why?
Yeah.
And once you find that out, then
Yeah.
okay, let's get a plan together to move
Yeah.
forward and
Yeah.
get ourselves out of this mess. don't
Yeah.
don't get swallowed up in the guilt and shame. You can't do that.
I
Take a
love that.
minute, have the
Yeah.
emotion,
Yeah.
accept it, receive it, let it
Yeah.
flow, and then move
Yeah.
forward. Make a plan and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the don't get swallowed up in guilt and shame because I think that does happen. We guilt
Sure.
ourselves saying, "I should be happy. I should be grateful," right? And we start shitting all over ourselves.
That's literally
And I love what you say about, like, why would they hold on to it? And when I work with clients, sometimes it's easy for us to forget that something brought in that job or that opportunity, right? Something brought that in. And when we leave what we have, that something's going to bring something new in, right? We when we start to look at our job as our source of abundance or our partner as our source of love, uh, we can start to idolize. That's
sure.
idolize. There's a whole nother energy that brings those into us. And when we remember that, I think we're better able to know that we're going to be caught on the other end of that shift or that change, that something else is going to show up.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I love that you did that. I love that you took that leap. So in taking that leap now and doing, working through all the, the shame and the inner
Sure.
critic and all those things, what lesson or blessing has that challenge given you in your life?
Going through all of that, I actually thought if you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have told you I was in a place where I didn't think that happiness existed. And
Ooh,
so, and that's a really dark place, but it's a real honest place.
yeah.
And it's the truth. And a lot of people get there. But
Mhm.
for me, doing exactly what I did, finally having a real hard talk with myself and saying, this is not healthy for me. I have to get a plan to move on. Through that and
Mhm.
through therapy and trauma processing, I was able just to release it. And for me, just that piece just meant so much overall. I would never, knowing what I know now, I'd never change it. No, I mean, because
Wow.
it's like I'm
Yeah.
I just never thought I would achieve where I'm at. So yeah.
If you hadn't made that decision, Darren, what story would you be living right now, you think?
I would be living a story of pain and torture right now,
Mm,
and
mm,
feeling chained and trapped and
mm,
silenced. And I didn't have a voice, even though
mm,
I was correct.
mhm. And
So
you wouldn't be shining your light, doing all the
that's
tarot and
absolutely
the
right.
coaching
That's
and the guru.
absolutely right. That's
Yeah,
absolutely right.
yeah. So much would have been lost,
Absolutely.
if you hadn't made that decision. And I love how your story exemplifies the power of decision. And I
Yeah.
love how you said, I had to talk to myself. I had to sometimes we have to get real with ourselves,
Whew,
right?
yes. Yes. It's true.
Get
Some
the
people say, wake up and get some coffee and put on your gangster rap and handle the day. And that's kind of like what I did, though. I mean, really, you have to have a sit down
Mhm,
like, hey, Darren, we have to be real with, ourselves right now. What we're doing is not working. And, after
mhm.
4 failed relationships, or
Ah,
after going back in the closet, or after,
mm-mm,
the same fight with your family the 18th
mhm.
time this year, whatever your story is,
Yeah,
you know, let's deal with it once and for all. And we have to be real with ourselves.
yeah. What's the common denominator? Like, you can only do you. You can only do
Exactly.
you, right?
Exactly.
Like you said. I just love that.
And yeah, and unfortunately, I feel that a lot of us have come from dealing with a lot of narcissistic relationships.
Mhm.
So we're not programmed to think we're only doing us. We're programmed to think we have to make this other person happy and validate them along, and then we'll be happy after that. And that's so couldn't be further from the truth. So if that is your story, please reach out to Mitch or myself, and we would love to talk to you
Yeah,
more on that, because really it's comes from a place of false programming. And I feel that we need to stop saying that it's taboo to talk about this. No, it's not. We
mhm.
need to talk about it. It's
Yeah,
healthy to talk about it, because
yeah,
that's where the medicine from
yeah.
our experiences and and how to fix the problem comes from.
Yeah.
Solutions.
Yes, and so it sounds like you broke the pattern. You have a new
Yes.
husband.
Yes. Yes.
How'd you meet?
Yes. Interestingly enough, I was going to go to a city in the Middle East just to visit by myself. I was traveling. I was single for a couple of years and world
Mhm.
traveler just by myself.
Mm,
And that trip got rearranged last minute. And so one of
mm,
my veteran friends that I traveled to Brazil with
mhm,
the previous year was like, why don't you go to Argentina? I never gave it any more thought. And I was like, well, you know what? Yeah, sure. Why not? So I did. I booked my
mhm,
ticket just
mhm.
myself.
Wow.
And I did have dating apps, so I changed the location. And wouldn't you know, there were only two people that messaged me, and now one of them is my husband. But we even share the same birthday. We're both born on New Year's Eve, so yeah, both 12/31 Capricorns.
No.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And to the earlier point of how I received signs and synchronicities while I
Mhm,
was single those couple of years and doing my
mhm.
trauma work in Portland, I had some of the worst holidays I've ever had in my life. I
Oh,
had, because I was alone. I was all alone in dealing with that. And I was not in a place to be around friends or family. So I sat on Christmas alone. And I'll never forget 2 years ago when I was in such a bad spot that I called the suicide hotline on Christmas. So
oh,
that is how much life changes around. But,
mm,
through all of that, here we are. And
mm.
it's just, yeah, it's
Out
amazing.
out of the
Life changes.
shadows, yeah, out of the
Yeah.
shadows again, right? Yeah,
So
that's
you
totally
can, yeah, things can be turned around and be such a blessing. So
mm,
don't ever
mm.
think they can't.
Well, and I know you have big plans. We're going to do a commercial break here in a second, but we're going to talk about some of your dreams and future goals, as well as that story that you're going to put in the book of life, right?
Yes.
For others to learn from. So don't go away. Come back right after this commercial.
I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Here and now I can see I was made beautifully. I was made in the image. I was made in the image of love. Wish we'd all stop acting like we're strangers if we could see underneath. We are one family, and it don't matter where you come from. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one love. One love, one love. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one love. Every heart beats to the rhythm of one. What if we could rise?
Wow, amazing commercial. I want to get in on that concert. Looks
I
good.
know.
Welcome back to Change Your Story, Change Your Life. I'm here with Darren Gipson. And
Hello.
Darren, what chapter of your life are you in right now?
I feel like I am really just in a third of the way through my book, actually. I know that sounds really specific, but that's what you get.
No, right.
I'm a third of the way through. So yeah, I don't want to cut my story short.
No, well, it sounds like it's evolving, right? So what are some
Sure.
of your dreams and goals moving forward?
Yeah, so right now, as you previously mentioned, I am a full-time master's student at Pepperdine University out of Malibu. So I am doing a master's in legal studies. So previously I was an adjudicator, and what that means for you guys that aren't familiar, that is someone who makes decisions, administrative decisions that are law-based and binding. And I did that for veterans and their beneficiaries. So with that experience, and to be quite frank and honest, my own injustices throughout life, I decided I wanted to go back to school and then pursue a legal track in order to, now that I have my voice and I know that I have others and I'm able to help others that can't help themselves sometimes, that's why I wanted to go down this track to really be the best light, the best fellow human that I can to help others, honestly, because I did have people show up for me, and I just kind of want to give back. And I just feel like that's kind of why we're all here on this earth. Really, we have to work together.
So right. We come here for each other. That's my bottom line. I think that's why we show up. And so you're going to get your your law degree. So do you see yourself doing like socially cutting edge work or representing certain types of law? Like what kind of law specifically?
Sure. I am actually looking to go into family law, and then with a specialized field of mediation and that kind of work, in part because of my own experience of the past, my own negative experiences that I wish had been different. But again, I'm not going to beat myself up for past me that didn't know what I didn't know. And you just got to keep it moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes people don't know how to handle our truth. And that I think can be the painful part, right? When we have to tell somebody something difficult. I think that what I would offer people is, if you're hearing something that's hard to hear, be easy with yourself first and foremost, right? But also try to do no harm. Sometimes I think when we get caught in those places of hearing somebody's truth, that's hard to hear. Sometimes we just want to throw it back on the person, right? Have you had that experience?
Yeah, and similar. And I regret it actually. And I didn't know I was even doing it, unfortunately,
Wow.
until
Wow.
I went to trauma therapy. Really, I didn't know because
Interesting.
I grew up with those behaviors. And so for
Mhm.
me, it was I grew up in the for validation, you hurt me, I'm going to hurt you harder. And that was validation for me.
Right.
So unfortunately, but I am,
Right.
it's a hard pill to swallow, but live and in front of the world, I'm not scared or ashamed to say that I did make poor choices based on that mindset. I did. I made
Mhm.
poor parenting choices and
Mhm.
choices that I dearly, dearly regret. I do.
Mhm.
And I
Mhm.
can't take it back. And I wish a million times I could. But what
Mhm.
I can do is I said, you know what can I do moving forward to address this?
Mhm.
Because what I did was so to me felt gross. So that's why I was like,
Mhm.
that's not me. That doesn't align with
Right.
me. So I addressed it in therapy.
Right.
And I've reached out to certain individuals that that got caught up in that crosswind and that crossfire.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah.
apologized and I've owned
Yeah.
my part because that's
Yeah.
what I can do. And I
Yeah.
know things, just will resolve the way they need to. But
Right.
I really advise people to really just take a deep, hard look at that and don't beat yourself up either.
Yeah. Well, we work with the highest and best collectively that we have at that time, in terms of our understanding, our fears, our own wounds, right? It's like a collective response, and at that moment, doing the best that we can. And when we're looking back again, like you did, we can see so much more because we're different. We're more healed, we're more evolved, and then we
Sure.
go back and kind of, clean things up as best we can and start that healing process. Uh,
Absolutely. And I also found that I think it's important to say, I don't know why I feel like it was important to say, but a lot of times I would look to distraction to quiet my mind, whether that be,
mm,
and that can come in different forms, drugs, sex, rock and roll. It can be as simple as having the music on 24/7 in your
yeah,
ears just to
yeah,
avoid some truth. And so I
yeah.
know it's hard, but if any one of you guys are going through that, hang in there, keep your chin up, and keep pushing. You got this.
Yes. No, I love that you mentioned that because it's easy to pull in distraction when we feel uncomfortable.
Excellent.
Whether it's music or interneting or binge watching TV. I mean, there's so many levels of distraction. And then that keeps us from our truth and our healing. So I love that you mentioned that. Well, I'm going to ask my signature question now. I love this question. So somebody comes to you and they're writing the book of life, and this book is going to be handed off to future generations long after you're gone. And they ask for a story from your life that will help people along their journey. What story from your lived experience would you want included and why?
It's a really hard decision. However,
Right.
for the book of life, I would absolutely I would write about my military experience actually.
Really?
I
Really?
would. Um yeah, I would.
And what specifically in like the story, like what would that look like?
For me, as a young adult coming from conservative Kentucky, that was my first experience with other individuals, people of color,
Mm,
other gay people,
mm,
people from around the world, other countries,
mhm,
militaries, and allies.
mhm, mhm.
I was also a medic in the military, so I did medevacs from
Wow.
Iraq and Afghanistan. So for me, it was such a even though it was, yes, around the military, through all of that, I saw the good in everybody. So that is what I would
Mm,
want to
mm,
share through that shared
mm,
experience of mine. So I was in healthcare, and regardless of the end result, I'm not taking a political stance here. This is just me saying my medical work that I did and coming across so many unique
mm,
individuals around the world showed me that even through my deepest, darkest experiences in life to date, that overall, people are generally good, and you will find your tribe. So keep optimism throughout it all.
I love that. Keep optimism throughout it all. Yeah, I can only imagine, right, coming from Kentucky and your situation into the military, which is very diverse. Almost like a front seat to, uh, diversity, inclusion, and equity, right? Because having to break down stereotypes and any programming that in your culture you might have been given. So, yeah, I love that. I think that's a wonderful example to include in the book, so that we keep moving forward with inclusion and seeing each other and cultural sensitivity. Because when we stop remembering to look at each other and with each other and be present and allow ourselves to learn about each other, then that's when all that discrimination can seep back in. And it's not like you get to a point in society and you're good. It can go backwards. So I just love that would be, in the book, moving forward. So Darren, what do you got going on these days? If people want to work with you, how should they do that? They want to reach out and get a reading, or where else can they
Let me
find
dry my eyes first. You got me all.
I got you all verklempt.
No, so nowadays, like I said, we're in Sacramento right now. So if anyone is in this area, I know we're all over the world, but you can reach out if you want to be in person. If not, if you need any spiritual coaching or tarot readings, you can check out my YouTube, or you can reach out to my email address, Darren Gipson at kingpin.com, LLC.com rather. And, go to my website, kingpintarot.com, where you can book my services and also check out all of my other channels.
Oh, fantastic. And you have a show coming up September 16th and 17th here in Sacramento. Where will that be happening, and how can people find that?
Yes, I will be working. This is one of the Body, Mind, and Spirit expositions, and they travel the United States. However, they'll be in Sacramento those dates, 16th and 17th at the Scottish Rite Masonic Center here in Sacramento. So head on over to my Instagram, and I'll have marketing posted for that. So hope to see you guys there.
Okay. Fabulous. Okay, good. I'll be there for sure.
Yes.
So I want to call out few people's comments here. Thank you, Lori, for saying that you love that we come here for each other. Thank you for that comment. And Mama G says, another awesome show, with all these really cool emojis. Thank you so much for your comments and for being present and live at the show today. It certainly makes a difference. We can't do these shows without some help. And I'm just so grateful to New Thought Media Network. And I want to encourage people to support the network with your cash, right? We need to fund everything that's going on with this show and other shows that bring the light, like Darren just brought for us today. And I'm so grateful to have you on the show. I also want to thank 18 Source Productions. That's where I'm at, in the studio of 18 Source Productions. They do audio and visual professional productions. And I want to thank Laura Brzezinski for being my engineer and always making everything flow so amazing. Definitely appreciate you. And again, if you want to join me September 9th in Phoenix, we're going to do a Taming Your Inner Critic workshop. You can also reach out to me via my email, mitch@speakteachinspire.com, if you'd like to work with me or learn about some of my other programs. So any final thoughts, Darren, before we wrap up the show today?
Just everybody, keep your head up, chin up, optimistic, good energy, and just keep doing you. Don't let the people get you down, people. Just keep it moving. Keep it moving. And keep tuning in and watching Mitch, because he's amazing.
Oh, thank you. I so appreciate you. Well,
thank you again.
Join us next Wednesday. And again, we're at 11. I'm going to see what guest I have coming up next Wednesday. I can't believe it's going to be September already. Oh, I haven't confirmed him yet, so I don't want to say his name yet, but oh, it's going to be good. Trust me, it's going to be amazing. I'm so excited. Well, I wish you all the best on your journeys, Darren, and I'm sure we will talk again, and maybe I'll be on your show someday. That'll be fantastic.
Yes. Let's do it.
And I wish you safe travels, and thank you for all the work and beautiful light you're bringing into the world.
Thank you too.
And we'll see everybody next week, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, to change your story, change your life. And in the meantime, tell your story, shine your light. We're in this together. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks for watching.